Hi guys, it's me again, Coach Saki from ReConnect. Today, on our second episode, we may look into one of the most complex and most difficult topics to discuss. Our topic today has to do with what informs what we think is good performance in sport. This is an extremely complex topic to understand and very difficult to achieve. But we will try our best to articulate what could really be the meaning of good performance. We think that the best way to define and try and articulate this topic would have to do with us first mentioning what we think are indicators of what good performance is. So we will try and see if we have those kind of obvious indicators of what is called good performance. For an example, a very clear indicator of good performance. Let's talk about athletics. In athletics, it's easy to have an indicator. Why? Because there, good times will just tell you about your performance. It doesn't have to be scientific or something. If you run well, your times will tell you that your time today is much better than yesterday's time. So that's a very good indicator of good performance, but it is in athletics. In other sports, for an example, we will dwell most in football or soccer for others. So, what would we mention as good indicators for good performance in football? One, in football, it could be very easy to count the number of goals that are scored in every game or match that is being played at those different levels that you play in. So that could be one indicator of good performance for a team or for individuals for that matter. So we could use it as an indicator, that is the number of goals scored. If we try and find a third or second indicator, are people enjoying? Enjoyment could be one of those indicators that show that you are performing well, because we know for a fact that when you are not enjoying the game, you're not really performing very well. You can feel it yourself that, okay, I'm not myself, so I'm not enjoying the game is specifically for enjoyment. So if you are not enjoying, you know it for a fact that, okay, I am not performing. If we try and find the fourth one indicator, we could look into issues of in national team performance. You know, if your national team is performing very well, it might be a nice indicator as to, you know, the league is performing very well. Nationally, individuals are performing very well. You know, in South Africa, we have a number of codes and national teams, for an example. You know, you have a team of rugby, Springboks, whereby Springboks are global champs. You would agree then South African rugby is good, is performing very well. You clearly, because of their standings, you know, in the global league or global status. But if you go down and look at Bafana Bafana, Banyana is performing very well because they are regulars in terms of World Cup qualification and continental continental competitions. You see, such as African Cup of Nations. But if we look at Bafana, you'll find that we struggle. Then we are surprised by our performance. In many a times, you'll find that we are surprised by our performances in continental competitions. Then it means that we will have more struggle when it goes to global competitions, which we struggle to qualify for. So which means that that could be used or utilized as one of those indicators that say to us that no man, our team is performing or not performing. Let's try and add maybe the fifth indicator, so that we have a list. We have a list of indicators. Probably the stadium attendance. Let's talk about the stadium attendance. What would inform the stadium attendance? Good performance, number of goals. We if we are not performing well, people will not go there to pay their money for a very poor performance, for an example. So it might be included in the list of good performance indicators, so that we are able to measure our performances, for poor performance and good performance. So if we can see, sometimes we could, sometimes they may attribute that to marketing, but sometimes it's not even marketing, but the performance of teams, the lack of goal scoring, and the lack of excitement, and the list is long as far as what could be affecting our attendance too, including marketing, of course. But I am very sure that mostly it is because of underperformance that people don't really attend certain matches in particular. So we might include it, but it's still disputable, you see. But if we try and see if we can't look into the sixth one, how many players can we move to overseas or better economy? That is bigger clubs where they'll make more money, make use of their talents and skills and careers. You see, the number has gone very much down. If there was a stage whereby we had a player who could be the captain of an English team 40 years back, you see. So what does it mean about our recent performance? If we say in the last 10 years, how many players were able to be just to be in the English teams? You see, now we don't even have 10 players that are in the English league, let alone being in the first 11. So it might be utilized as one of those very important indicators that we could also use to measure our performance as a country. Performance can be measured individually, and performance can be measured as a country. What is it that South Africa would you rate South Africa as a good footballing? Because, for an example, we are supposed to be at the level of Brazil, but you can see Brazil is all over the world because they are performing very well. Then what is the difference? That's what we want to realize. You see, so if we could import more players, it would signal the fact that no, we are productive and we are having very good players. Or, for an example, if I look into the fact of the availability of sharp or aggressive, goal scorers, players that are called strikers, do we have those players in our country? The country is suffering. For example, in particular, where in lower divisions. Now we have the competition has become even more intense. In what way? The competition has become even more intense in the fact that you'll find 16-year-olds in national teams, in other countries. In our country, 16-year-olds are still kids. Of course, the landscape and the logistics and everything's economy and other things, but Why are we so behind in terms of of production of good players at young age? You know, we would be excited by a 19-year-old that is trying his level best. Even there, the numbers, you will find that we have one 19-year-old that is in the first 11 of Orlando Pirates or Kaizer Chiefs. That is really, really, really convincing in terms of performance. You see, so we are way, way too behind. This topic is therefore trying to find out what exactly is good performance and what exactly informs this good performance and why is it impossible for us to rectify that aspect and try and push where we need and really need to push, for an example. So, oh, there's also this very important aspect that I also used as an indicator for good performance. If you have the greatest icons and legends of our football not interested in watching our football, they would wish or rather watch European football. You ask them why? No, it's not interesting, it's not exciting. So, what exactly would you blame that on? If our icons are not interested in watching their excuse me, their own kids playing and seeing that, okay, you know, people lose interest in watching our level of football. Probably, I'm not sure why, but it's mainly because we are underperforming. And if if these legends, for an example, Lucas Radebe, would you think Lucas Radebe is a fan of our football? Is he interested in watching our football? Or is he an English supporter because he's got a home so in England, because he's got a background in England, that's the football he understands better. Now at home we are underperforming. Will he be interested in watching our football or not? I'm just making an example with Lucas Radebe because I heard about two other icons or legends saying the same thing. You know, John Mabizela was in England. Joe Mosono is one of the greatest legends or icons of our South African football. They said the same thing. You know, South African football does not interest, and as a result, we watch English football. You know, people will say something of that nature, and there will be no remedy as to why are these things happening. You see, and at some stage, the minister once called us mediocres. You see, which is a very true fact. Because honestly speaking, we are mediocres because of the indicators that I have just mentioned. So, what I could say, if we agree on the indicators that I've just mentioned, that is about, I mentioned about 7 to 8 indicators of why we would say we are underperforming, or indicators that we will be able to use to measure our football. So in fact, our performance. So what I would say is that out of these indicators, if you agree, then the next step would be to find out what exactly informs this good performance that we are talking about. In the book of in the applied sports psychology book, 3 ingredients of good performance are mentioned. The first one has to do with the state of mind. The book says 40 to 90% of the state of how much the state of mind contributes towards good performance. So what we can say, your mental preparedness will contribute 40 to 90% of good performance. If we then go to the second one, probably the second one that the book mentions is tactical intelligence. Tactical intelligence is your understanding of the game, that is moving on and off the ball. But we may not be sure of how much it contributes. But there's also a third one, which is conditioning or fitness to many. The two are nicely related. How? The two are nicely related in the sense that the fitter you are, the better tactically you become. So the more unfit you are, you look like you're not intelligent otherwise. But that's how the two are related. But we just realized then out of that the most important aspect of good performance may have to do with the mental state, which therefore means that we may therefore be needed to focus more on establishing the best mental state to inform good performance. So if we do not have any kind of mental preparations, which may be attributed to a lack of sports psychology education, in particular at lower divisions, where or developmental stages, because that is where you are supposed to start building on issues such as mental strength building. So if we at this moment in time we are still struggling in terms of capacity issues where coach education is concerned at lowest division, and the aspect of believing in the fact that qualifications are good only for elite athletes. That's where our main downfall is, because it's almost not necessarily vice versa, but it is vice versa, because the most complex coaching stages are the developmental stages, where you need to teach kids the technique even before introducing the tactical aspect. So if coaches there at that level are not qualified and have no capacity, then it means by the time kids are supposed to be developed, they won't be developed, because the technique may contribute towards these mental strength issues. The tactical aspect, that is the positional play and the movement in the field of play, may have a very huge contribution towards building the same mental strength that you are trying to build when you are preparing your mental state. So it is very unfortunate that as a country, if our lower division coaches are not cared for and catered for, we may continue to have the same problem. So this is what we believe as ReConnect. We believe that at these days, and times where there is an abundance of information in terms of coaching abilities and fitness and other aspects or that contribute towards performance, we may have to look into our lower coach education curricula in particular to see if it's still helping us in terms of trying to assist the lower division coaches, which are have the duty to develop our young athletes, which is extremely more complicated because you want to change a child into a superstar, which is extremely scientific and difficult, not that easy for someone who does not really have capacity issues. There are a lot of aspects that coaches have to look into when there are aspects of nutrition. If we do not have such coach education at lower divisions and lower levels, you know, if I can mention more, nutrition, speed building, physiological aspect of building these guys. There'll be more that these guys will have to do, including tactical intelligence. They introduce the tactical intelligence to kids, and you'll find that at 15 they are still struggling because of a lack of uh, capacity with e-coach education. So we may have to change our way of understanding or belief that our coaches are not that important at lower division. This is the state in South Africa. If you are not an elite coach, you will struggle for the rest of your life, where coaches earn 0 to 2.5 thousand rand. Coaches are undermined at school. People want their kids to perform, but what we cannot do is get good coaches, make sure your kids are attended to properly by someone who could measure their growth and development because of the availability of coaches and capacity issues. As a country that has been mentally oppressed during apartheid times and systems, we may then have such a huge struggle in terms of building our state of minds, because we are therefore at the lowest in terms of mental strength due to prolonged mental oppression. So it may not be very easy for us to find answers to the psychological aspect of the game, as much as we might not be able to have it within our lifestyles. Sometimes sport may be able to assist us in terms of self-esteem issues and other aspects that really are psychological or that we may not understand the effects of. You know, for an example, if I'm trying to mention part one of the psychological aspects of the game, how good is to perform in a fully packed stadium or an empty stadium. There's a difference between the two. We do know that aspect, but we cannot explain what exactly is going on. What is the difference when there's an audience and when there is no audience? Why am I motivated when there's an audience? And why am I not motivated when there's no audience? One aspect or question that I really ask to many coaches, because the main function of a coach is improvement of performance. Now, if I say one question I love asking is, what is the main challenge, not necessarily resistance, if I call it well, resistance to good performance? It may not be very easy to mention or answer that question. What do you think is the main resistance to good performance in all sporting, in all sports? Any code, it's there in any code. We are struggling to manage it. We are struggling at all levels. It doesn't have to be at the lowest or highest level that we are struggling with what I'm talking about. So we wish that we could improve our coach education, in particular at lower division, and in particular where the psychological aspect is concerned. So, as Reconnect, we wish that if we do get the funding that we are trying to find, we may have to do more research, because the main tool, it's very unfortunate that the main tool to development may have to do with research and education, unfortunately. So if we are going to look into the academic auditing, whereby we look at what qualifications do we have, which may inform our knowledge of what we understand. You know, we do have in the country sports scientists, but we also have, a sports psychologist. But do we think are they effective enough to give us the best result in terms of good performance? I'm very sure the main reason behind that is the ability to utilize sports psychologists. Or do they ever know how they will be able to assist the country move forward in terms of understanding the mental state of the good performance issue? So there are a lot of aspects that we could try and focus on, do research on, and try and find solutions where we can think of a situation of the difference between rural and urban, in terms of mental strength building and mental strength. Think of a situation where the country is at its worst stages of poverty. Do you think those people will ever develop, will ever get to the level where we wish that this football thing could be utilized, or sports for that matter could be utilized for poverty eradication and other aspects that we could be using it, such as self-esteem issues, which is something that you could struggle to live without. So we are looking at, this is our second topic after the investment and other aspects that we talking about in sports. So this one was the most important and difficult to research on, but we will try researching. There's lots more of these programs where this is from. For example, if I would mention just a few, for example, who teaches the lower division coaches periodization? You see, there is no periodization but in every sport there is periodization. Why? Because there is a program. On top of that program, you need to train. So if there's a program or a calendar, you need to therefore train in a certain aspect. So who teaches the lower division coaches periodization, for an example? Who teaches them fitness? Who explains, fitness test, I want to say, who will teach these guys fitness, as into how to build fitness, how much is enough, what is speed, how much of speed? Okay, probably they might believe cones and stuffs, but what about other aspects? Speed, speed endurance, aggressive speed, and other aspects that are part of the coaching science. So we feel, this is why we decided to come on board. We feel that those guys may struggle in terms of capacity and, unfortunately, reinvestment. That is, they will never be recognized because they are coaching kids. The most unfortunate aspect of our sporting industry, where developmental coaches are not given what is due to them due to the complexity of the job that they are doing. That is starting from teaching athletes the technique to the tactical aspect until they become elite. So guys, this one is the more complex of them all. As much as it is disputable, but it is very important that we find out how do we then get ourselves out of that so that we can achieve. This thing will lead to a situation whereby what is happening at this moment in time, that is, athletes will not really achieve or get to a level that is where it is called ultimate potential or reach their potential because they were not developed properly from, people get to be coached at very very old ages. If you start getting a proper coach at 16, then you are late for many many things. I would also want to mention something that we may not look into, as much as it is still confusing, because the vice versa is happening. Women football is growing very fast. I'm not sure whether it's because there is lack of competition, but the challenge that we are having, one, due to our culture as the black Africans, to be precise, whereby it's not easy to have a 6-year-old girl go and play football, train technique like boys. They won't have the opportunity to be playing football in the streets at the age of 7 or 8. By that time, they are overprotected by mothers because they are females. It is part of our culture, and unfortunately, circumstances do not allow our young daughters to be on the streets, playing football on the streets, going to training, in particular football at young ages, because parents would believe, no, there's no girl that will ever be playing football in my space because it's not really accepted yet for females to be playing football. So they will miss out on a lot of things. That is, they will start late, which therefore means that they don't really have a technique. But now the difference, or the the aspect that's contrary to what I'm saying is the fact that they are performing very well. They are playing at a global stage. That is in terms of our national women team. I'm still looking into the National League as to how many goals are scored. Do they have what we really need? But the other lovely aspect about our women football is that they are exporting more than Bafana can export to bigger leagues and other countries. Something that you would never really believe. So, which means, therefore, in women are fast in growing. You see, so now my wonder is, why are women even better in terms of a growth rate and development than us, who have all the time to start very early and have coaches and have everything to prepare ourselves. I am hoping that ReConnect is doing what we expect most. Do not forget to subscribe and like so that our programs can grow, and respond to our WhatsApp numbers so that we may be guided by your responses as to what is the next program that we may have to talk about or converse about. But if I were to mention, unfortunately or fortunately, we think that our next topic may have to do with coach education, which is informed by this topic of underperformance as to the curriculum of our coach education, in particular at lower divisions, so that we could talk about the effectiveness of our coach education in general. I understand very well that in order for someone to be a producer of coach education, you must be highly qualified and you must have a lot of knowledge. It is not easy to challenge these things, but we may be able to do that. Look into, is this course still really effective in terms of, trying to make our coaches give us what we want. Thank you for watching. We are hoping soon we will be bringing what I've just mentioned. That is the coach education. Thank you, guys.